Okay, this is a sort of micrograph of a brain where the glioma is seen here, and the pathologist says it's very good. So I take her word for it. But you can see the differential staining within the site where the glioma is present. So in the heart lesions, there were proliferative heart lesions. The schwannomas, you can see in the GSM, went up to 5.5%, with the CDMA modulation up to 6.6%, with none in the controls. There were also hyperplasias, Schwann cell hyperplasias in the heart. Hyperplasias are essentially a preneoplastic lesion. These are excessive growth, number of cells in a focalized lesion, which has that potential to go on to develop into a tumor. So if we look at all of these, you can see that with 0 in the control and in the CDMA modulation with the male rats at 6 watts per kilogram, we're approaching 10% of proliferative lesions in that study group. The conclusion in that partial report was that the lesions, the hyperplasias and glial cell neoplasms, were likely the result of whole body exposure to GSM or CDMA modulated RFR. And the values seem to be more obvious with the heart lesions than in the brain. Summary of all of the data where DNA strand breaks were observed in rats, male or female. The strongest responses were in the frontal cortex in both rats and mice. The trends were significant, and the pairwise comparison between the dose group and the controls were significant. DNA strand breaks were also seen in the cerebellum, the hippocampus, in males in the liver and in the blood, every peripheral lymphocytes, and the others shown here. So what the importance of these results? These results are quite important because the incidence of the brain tumors and the schwannomas of the heart and the exposure-related increases in DNA damage in brain cells support that IR conclusion based on gliomas and acoustic neuromas among long-term cell phone users. The exposure intensities were limited by potential the heating effect at higher levels. So we're limited in terms of how high an exposure we could go. And these are similar to or slightly higher than the RF emissions from cell phones.
Is being done by our colleague Claudio Fernandez in Brazil's National Federal University of Porto del Sul, where the laboratory is working at 1 millimeter resolution in modeling of the brain that comes from the virtual family, which you're going to hear about later tonight. And what Claudio has done is to show that this here now, the yellow and white, is the higher exposure, greater absorption. And you can see there's more into the child there than into the adult. That is to say, it goes all the way through both eyes, as in the child, all the way into the full cheek, through the nose, as opposed to in the adult.